definitely what he was all about. Gosh, I even asked my Alexa device to write my message this week. I don't know if you saw my Facebook. But I went to Alexa and I said, Alexa, please write my message this week. And she said, sorry, I don't know that. Or like they say on Saturday Night Live, I don't know about that. So I had to do it myself, which is probably why I got the wrong message. But people often ask me how I come up with what I talk about on Sunday and with my crazy mind. It's really interesting because I always trust the Holy Spirit, and all through the week I open my mind to whatever it might be, and I'll either read something in a book, I'll see something on TV, here's a song on the radio, somebody will say something, and then it starts me on my crazy mental journey that I go on. And last week it was Mary Beth who, after the church service, talked about a Richard Rohr article that she was reading, and she told me about it, and she mentioned that he was talking about how most people just live on the surface of life. You know, whatever's the worldly concerns, living on the surface and never go deeper. And I thought, oh yeah, I want to do something with that. And then my mind took it and ended up somewhere totally else. But my process went to the question, well, what is it that takes us deeper? And of course, being a minister, my first answer would be, well, your spiritual practice takes you deeper, whatever that spiritual practice is. And I believe we each have our own. What works for one may not work for another. Then I went to my other source besides Alexa. I asked Michael. And he said, well, it's service. It's living your life in service to others. Wow, that was so good. I was almost embarrassed about what I came up with. And then I thought of all the ancient legends and stories, like the search for the Holy Grail, which has always been my favorite. You can see where my mind goes with it. And one thing led to another, and I ended up on a website called chivalrynow.net, all about the Holy Grail legends, because it's such a universal archetype, the search for the Holy Grail, and all the Grail knights who were searching for the Holy Grail. And of course, there's so many interpretations of what that means. Obviously, the Grail was a cup. In Christian tradition, it was the cup that Jesus used at the Last Supper. And people, everybody from Indiana Jones on has been trying to find the cup that Jesus used at the Last Supper, the Holy Grail. And as legend has it, it was brought to France by Joseph of Arimathea, who also brought along Mary Magdalene to France. Which brings us to another interpretation of the Holy Grail, that Mary Magdalene is actually the vessel and her womb is the cup that carried the bloodline of Jesus. She was his wife and carried the bloodline. You don't have to believe that. I like to think it's true because I'm a romantic. But you don't have to believe that. A third thing, though, and I think that's something all of us can agree on, that the Holy Grail is a very deep symbolic symbol of the mystery of life, that we are all the vessel of Christ. Every one of us is the vessel of Christ. And the search for the Holy Grail is the search for that higher Christ consciousness, where we express and live from a higher place of being. The Holy Grail is the symbol of life's journey. And if you remember some of the legends, there are so many legends of the Holy Grail, that there's so many stories, and they're all a little different, so it can be confusing over which one is right, but there are many, many wonderful stories of the Grail legends. But the knights that are searching for the Holy Grail almost always face great challenges, and they have to decide what's the right action to take under these great challenges. Does that sound like your life? I know it does mine. So many challenges, and I always have to figure out, what do I do here? What do I do here? But the deeper we go, it forces us to go deeper. Talk about not living on the surface. Our challenges force us to go deeper. So we tap into those qualities and powers of the Christ that make us stronger, that make us better, more expansive beings. Well, the Knights of the Round Table, starting with King Arthur, were committed to the quest. They were committed to chivalry, living from those high ideals, those greater standards, and they wanted to prove themselves spiritually worthy. And in the legends, only 3 of the knights actually found the Holy Grail and were able to access it. Sir Galahad, Sir Percival, and Sir Lancelot. Well, he was allowed to the door. He wouldn't let him in because of that whole thing with Guinevere, but that's, yeah. Poor guy, that was a whole other message for a whole other day. But the tradition of the quest involved, and here's where it loses me. You have to ask the right questions and find the right answers. And I don't know about you, but when I go somewhere and they say, well, ask a question. I don't know. That's usually the first thing I say. So the story is all about asking the right question that has the right answer. And the question is always something like, what's the secret of the Holy Grail? Or to whom does the Grail serve? That was the question they were to ask. And it ends up the answer isn't quite as important as the search itself. It's the journey itself where we find meaning in life. And I'm not sure that it's a one-size-fits-all answer. The author of the original Grail legends, and I'm going to kill his name, excuse me, wherever you are, something like Chrétien de Troyes, Marie, you're French, you could probably answer that better than me. But he died before completing the legend, and I think that might have been intentional. We all have to find those answers within ourselves. What works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. We can't be told how to solve the mystery. We have to find it deep within us. And Sir Percival was the first one to discover the right answer. You see, he went to the wounded Fisher King. The Fisher King is a whole other legend that's part of the Grail legends. The king, and there are many different versions of this story. I'll tell you another one later. But he had a wound that wouldn't heal. And not only was the king, did the king have a wound that wouldn't heal, but the land itself was barren. The land itself wouldn't grow crops until the king was healed. And so Percival goes to the wounded king. And the king asks him, whom does the Grail serve? The first time he didn't get the answer right, so he went off and came back a second time. The king asked him, whom does the Grail serve? And the answer was, you, my lord, you. And the first time I heard that, I thought, I don't get it. I couldn't figure that out. And then I realized, well, metaphysically, the Holy Grail is our higher self, our Christ of our being. And it serves us in our wounded humanness. I don't know about you, but I've had lots of wounds. I'm talking about let me remember. I've long forgotten the truth of my being. And that leads me into some craziness. The higher self serves me to heal my woundedness because I'm stuck here. The Grail serves to awaken me. And it serves me through my life experiences. And Jesus gave us a clue how to live with that in your life experience. He said there is only one law. What was that one law? The law of love. That's the only law we need here. He said, love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And that's part of the Grail legend, that as we extend love to others, as we help to heal others, we heal ourselves. And we ourselves go deeper into the mystery of the Grail. The essence of that mystical experience is, once again, we are the vessel of Christ. And then, like St. Francis, we say, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love, and so on, and so on. And as we extend that love each in our own way in service to others, then we go deeper in our healed ourselves. So the great summary on the lessons of the quest of the mystery of life is what? We are the vessel of the Christ. We are divine. We are one. And the challenges on the quest do what? Force us to go deeper. Access the power of the Holy Grail, or the Christ within. And that every life experience, no matter how mundane, has meaning if we don't turn away but embrace every experience and go deeper. The Grail serves you and I on our quest. And then the question changes to, what do you do with the secret of the Holy Grail? Who do you serve? How do you extend the love that you are? On the website that I went to, it reminded us once again that life is the quest for the Holy Grail. And by searching for what is true in every moment, we're not dissuaded by what is false, by the deceptions of the illusionary world, by the search for what is true. Well, I'd like to recommend 2 movies. Well, there are a lot of movies. Excalibur. There must be at least a dozen movies about the Holy Grail and Excalibur. I even brought my sword. When I bring it out next time, I want you all to yell. Did anybody see way back in 1991? That's a lot. Talk about let me remember. Do you remember the 90s? There was a movie called The Fisher King with Robin Williams and Jeff Bridges. Many of you saw it. We rented it again this week since I was talking about this. And I forgot, it was just an amazing movie. I mean, it was the 90s, so it's going to be a little from the slant of the 90s. But it was a modern-day story of the healing of our wounds through the search for the Holy Grail, and how both of these men, Jeff Bridges and Robin Williams, were so wounded. But in serving each other, they found the healing. It's very bizarre, but it's fun to watch. The second version of the Holy Grail story is in that movie, because in that story, the Grail was hidden in fire. And those people that went to search for the Holy Grail for fame and fortune and success and money went into the fire to grab the Holy Grail, and their hands were burned. And that's how the king became wounded, because he had searched for the Holy Grail for fame and fortune instead of for assisting others. And so the fool came to the king in that story. And the fool saw that the king was wounded and suffering, and that the land was barren. And the fool reached in the fire for the cup because he saw the king was thirsty and needed a cup to give the king a cup of water. And not only was the fisher king healed, but the fool was awakened as well. Again, back to the law of love. As we help others heal, then we too are healed. Beautiful, beautiful movie. Crazy movie, but beautiful movie. Now, the second movie is a current one. How many of you have gone to see The Post? A few of you have? Was that awesome or what? I loved it because we went, it must have been one of the first days. The theater was packed. And the audience kept cheering at different times, which is always fun when that happens. But again, it had nothing to do with the search of the Holy Grail. But it was sort of a modern day reminder that we're all called to join the Knights of the Round. Back to chivalry, back to integrity, honesty, truth, and love. That search for the Holy Grail that takes us deeper into the law of love and into those higher Christ qualities of truth and love. Then the power of the Holy Grail serves you on the quest. And Excalibur! Are you ready for this? I think we need to take this into prayer, okay? Pray for me for my next message. Let's take it into prayer. God, we are willing, and we seek your living, loving presence deep within us. We are willing to let go of all the worldly concerns that keep us on the surface. We are willing to go deeper. Show us the way. Assist us in strengthening the love that we are, and in which direction to serve others with that love. We are your vessel in this world, and we choose to use it with integrity and truth and light. And we are so grateful for each other here today, for each of us assists the other in the awakening. Even those who push our buttons assist us in pointing the way to forgiveness and light, and the wound that needs healing in us. We are grateful. We bless each one of you, and we embrace the Holy Grail within us. We say, thank you, God. And so it is. So it truly is. Amen.
Please join us in singing God.